Mint Collectibles. It's your boy Mint. I have a special guest here, Mr. Mike DeChellis from Heroes Restoration. How's it going, Mike?
Hey, pretty good, Steve. How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. It's funny. I just released that video today about what is comic book pressing.
Oh, did you? I was going to look out for that.
Yeah, so it's funny because I wanted to do a video on it, and I wanted to have some good examples. And I had just seen a picture that you posted with like some before and afters. So that's why I reached out to you to see if I could use them. And then it was like, well, wait a minute. Why don't we just do a whole thing about, what you do as far as pressing, cleaning, and restoration?
Yeah. And I'm super excited to do that, and not just talk about that, but help people help themselves with storage conditions and how to pick out good candidates for grading and pressing, and to keep an eye out for restoration.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited. I think I'm going to learn some things too. You want to introduce yourself to everybody, kind of how long you've been doing it and what it is that you actually do?
Sure. So my name's Mike DeChellis, and I'm owner and manager of Hero Restoration. And Hero Restoration's been around since 2009. We have 3 other employees, and we're a full service business. So what that means is we don't just offer, say, pressing service and full restorations. We try to offer all the little details that you might need in between, pre-screening, checking the slabs to make sure they should be cracked before pressed.
Awesome.
Yeah, taking care of the submission forms, all that stuff.
So we go back a few years now, right? Because I remember sending you books. It had to be 4 years ago or so.
Yeah, at least 4 years ago, and then you started doing other things.
Yeah, I stopped buying raw and sending them in. The weight game and the disappointments. It just was too much for me. But you offer a great service. I mean, we talked about pressing in the video earlier today, and my wife just said, basically, you can help people get more money out of their books. You can make people's books reach their full potential through pressing and cleaning and such.
Oh, yeah. So I'm super lucky, right? This is my full-time thing that I do. And instead of what I used to do before was fix computers, and nobody was happy about the bill. But when you press a comic, and it goes from like an 8.0 to 9.0, and now it's gone up $600 on GPA sales, and you spend $20 to press it. I mean, that's kind of like winning the lottery, except your odds are better than the lottery, right? You just got to send the right books in. You send the wrong books in, then you have bad odds.
And that's a good little point, because ICT Vinny said disappointments. Like, what was I talking about? And it's kind of like just what you just said. You sent the wrong book to get graded. Either you sent it and didn't get a restoration check and it comes back restored, or you send a modern book and you didn't check it thoroughly enough and it comes back a 9.4 and then it's worthless. So that's my man Julian Jasso. Yeah. So it's definitely a great service. So you got some stuff for us, Mike. Is there anything that you want to jump into right now?
Let's see. Jump into right now.
Well,
I just want to say that I'm ready for pretty much any questions we can talk about.
Sure.
Anything in specific, or I can just start by showing, maybe some slab examples of good candidates. Like that, right? Everybody wants to take this book right here, right?
Yep.
And turn that into 4 or 4.5 or 5.0, and not spend that much to do it too. Right? It used to be in the old days that you want to make a book better, you had to do all this restoration work. No, now you can just press it because the graders are so strict that it makes a huge difference.
So Mike, let me talk on that real quick. So you have an Avengers Force, a 3.5, first Silver Age Captain America. If that book was graded and the person did not get it pressed and cleaned, you could potentially turn that from a 3.5 to maybe a 4, maybe a 4.5. I mean, you've probably seen a couple of grade jumps before. 5.0 maybe.
Right. So the best grade jump I've seen is a 5 grade jump,
Damn.
and 2 grade jumps are pretty common. And a book like this is super obvious. It's got a huge, huge spine roll in it. And it was slabbed like that. So it actually had to go into a little wider slab. So we'll crack that out, get the spine roll out. But you can also look at the surface in the light, and you can see there is just a lot of stuff to press out of this book.
Gotcha.
And that's what you're looking for, is you're looking for stuff to press out. You don't just want to crack a book out because you think it can magically go up in grade.
Yeah, you don't just crack everything and press it. You got to look at grader's notes, or look at how you said, look at the front. You can see if it's not smooth. And real quick, I want to just answer Heather R's question. So Mike definitely sends your books into CGC, does the paperwork for you. They grade it, and then they mail it directly to you. So definitely
20% off too.
So that, yeah, can you speak on that? Because I mentioned it in my video. So you get 20% off when submitting to CGC.
That's right. Yeah, as a dealer, we get 20% off the submission fees. And since we provide other services to our clients, we go ahead and pass that discount on to them.
So it almost pays for itself, really.
It does. If you send ASM 300 under standard tier, you're actually pressing it for free from the discount that you save off the standard tier price. Exceeds our charge.
So, Mike, we have a question in the chat. I'll let you field it. So, Mitch Gurowitz is saying, let's say a corner was slightly torn on a cover. How is that restored?
Well, you wouldn't restore that, right? So there's a defined a divider between doing stuff that isn't considered restoration and doing stuff that is considered restoration. And that's because restored books are valued differently. An 8.0 restored book is not worth the same as an 8.0 unrestored. So fixing a tear is restoration. So you wouldn't do that to a book unless it was already restored. Otherwise, the impact on the value for fixing the tear doesn't offset the change in value, even though it goes up in grade.
So what you're saying is unrestored with a tear is worth more than if you restored that tear.
Exactly. And if you're worried about the tear getting worse, slab it.
So Mad Titan Joe saying he hates not having grader's notes when buying from eBay or from a local comic shop. Now, I believe you can buy CGC's grader's notes on any book now, correct?
You can. And they vary in price. So if you're thinking about having a book that's already graded, repressed or pressed and regraded, then you can get the grader notes, and that will help some. But the grader notes could be missing information that you need to know, or sometimes the information could be misleading. I can say that there's a crease and not mention that there's a color break, but there is a color break. So observation is still the main way to determine if it's a good candidate or not.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was heading. I'm sure you don't ever buy grader's notes because you are savvy enough to be able to look at the book for yourself and see. So I guess the best thing is to just kind of familiarize yourself with book defects, know what to look for. And I think we're going to talk about some of those things today. Sure.
Well, and to understand that everything is just an extra tool. So grader notes are a tool and they can help. And the same with observation. You could look at a book in a slab and think that there isn't anything to improve, but it's hard to see sometimes, and you can make a mistake there too. So you use a common. The more tools you have, of course, the more luck you'll have at winning.
Cool. So Heather R is asking, what is the general cost to get a book clean?
Well, so there's basically two categories of cleaning. There's dry cleaning that's done with the pressing service, and then there's solvent type cleanings that go deeper into the process and is generally considered restoration. The dry cleaning, which is a minimal process, is always included in almost every pressing fee of any company.
So to kind of piggyback off that, pencil, like Anthony Sanchez has a 4.5 Amazing Spider-Man 13 with a number 8 written with pencil. Does pencil require the deeper clean, or can that be just like a dry clean?
Pencil, if it's in the, so dry cleaning is done with mostly high polymer erasers, and you have to go like this. And so you can only do that in the white area. So if someone wrote pencil in the white area, you can do that with that technique. If they write it in the color area and you try to remove it, you'll remove the ink. And so then even if the pencil gets out, you damage the book. So, which is why if you want to take up dry cleaning and say a hobby to do yourself, you gotta be really careful. That's the best quick advice I could give there.
Good advice. Now, with him having an Amazing Spider-Man 13, if I'm not mistaken, that's the first Mysterio, which is a mostly white cover. So if it's on the white, you might be all right. Not to try to rhyme here.
Yeah. And so dry cleaning is a friction-based process. So the book also has to be sturdy for it. If that number 8 is right near a tear, right near the edge, dry cleaning it will be unsafe. Or the cover, because it's ASM 13, it could have heavy tanning. If it has heavy tanning, dry cleaning is also unsafe.
Good advice. Okay, so Bro Killa is asking, will dents come out with pressing?
Yeah, dents will come out. If the dent breaks color, it still might be indented afterwards, because color breaks are obvious signs that there's fiber damage. Now, sometimes dents won't come out because there's still fiber damage, and those are in a white area, or they're on a certain stubborn paper like Copper Age or 337. Yeah.
Gotcha. Hey, we have a lot of questions. I hope I'm not hitting you back to back too much, but
no, let's go. Fire them up.
So Dimitri's asking a question that I'm curious about too. So with these modern books, like the hard-covered books, like Batman Dan, for example, 9.8s are not worth that much. You want that 9.9 or that 10. Are you able to press those type of books, or is it even worth it?
Well, pressing can take a book that isn't a 9.9 or a 10 and make it a 10, but that's only if the defect that's keeping it from it's a pressable defect. And that's really not that common. Usually what's keeping the book from a 9.9 or a 10 is something by the time before it even gets into the first owner's hands, it's already like that. And there's not nothing you can do about that. Well, and you know that Detective Comics Tribute 1000.
Right.
There's a lot of 10s out there because they're just natural 10s because of it's just a greatly printed book.
Yeah, and exactly. They're square bound books. They're thicker stock paper, and actually, and what you said earlier, like, I was at the comic shop the other day, and he was opening the new comics in the diamond boxes. They're just thrown in there in stacks. There's no bags and boards or anything like that. So, a lot of those books don't come to you in near mint plus condition. To answer Heather's question, so they can send books to you by visiting your website, herorestoration.net. Correct?
Easy as that. You go there, click on submit my comics, fill out the form, print it off, box it up. If you want to know how to box it up, there's a video on how to do that there.
And definitely, Mike, I've used him personally, and Mike's been doing this for years. So feel confident sending your stuff to him, and he'll take care of you. Let's see. I'm just taking a look at the comments here. So here's a cool question from Alex Perez, and a lot of this has to do with like eras of CGC grading, right? So he's asking, like, do you find that the books in the older CGC slabbed labels that they're not being pressed, and that those are good candidates to be pressed?
Well, if you're talking about the old label where there's a rectangle white box in it,
the first label,
those ones from the very first label. That is true. There is a lot of those have not been pressed. And I think that a lot of people know that now. So the price of those is getting driven up. The availability of them is starting to shrink. So, but that is true. Pressing pressing really didn't become super popular until 2014, really.
Yeah. Right when I got into it.
A fair amount of it was being pressed from 2010 to 2014. Prior to 2008, though, most of that stuff wasn't.
Gotcha. Cool. So you know what? We're going to take one more question, and then we'll let you kind of show us what you got going on there. But Felix Maldonado has a good question that he has a raw AF-15 that's around a 3.0. If he has tape on the spine and on the top of the front cover, and it needs to be dry cleaned, do you recommend that the tape gets removed? Or it's kind of a loaded question. I don't know if you're able to see it on the screen.
Well, so not dry cleaning a book seems like it would be a bad thing if you press it. But unless there's physical debris on the surface, which can be picked off, it's really not a problem. So in that case, I would either recommend to not dry clean it and just press it, or not dry clean it and press it. But I would have to see the book to say, and of course, what would be taken in consideration would be, okay, would pressing really help it, even though it might have some pressable defects? So those are things that you weigh when you're trying to decide whether you should or shouldn't press or dry clean something. You want to make sure the book's going to benefit.
Yeah, isn't it
and
true
the grade's going to benefit.
Isn't it true that that might be a 3.0 no matter what, depending on what kind of defects it has?
It might be, and that isn't so easy to tell. I try when I can, but most of the time I can just tell you whether it needs a press or not. Translation into grade, the CGC gods get to decide that. I have no say over that.
Gotcha.
But it seems to work out pretty good sometimes.
Yeah, you're at the mercy of the grader sometimes. So we'll take a break from the questions. Mike, you got some stuff on the table. What do you got going on over there?
Let's see. So all these were good pressing candidates. Let's see if we can find a good example here.
So yeah, you'll find us some good pressing candidates. Mike's got the black light. He's going to show us how to detect some forms of restoration.
All right, we'll see if it'll show up here. I will try to reflect it off. All right, when I pull this into the light, hopefully what you'll see is some wrinkling here along the spine. Maybe not.
I don't think we can see it, but we get what you're looking for here.
So I'm looking for that, and this one has that. Now, this order's already been pre-screened, and I think the owner already screened it too, because none of them failed. So it really helps if you try to screen them ahead of time, or at least check with me. I've had people send me 9.6s, and not even with checking with me first. And there's a color breaking spine tick, plain as day, and so it's not going to get a 9.8, right? And these guys almost always are great pressing candidates. ASM 129. Let's see. Let's do some. So Mike, let's talk about restoration detection.
Real quick.
So you go ahead.
What I want to touch on really quick is because we do have some viewers that are newer to collecting. So when you say pre-screen, basically they send them to you, or even CGC offers that as well, right? To determine whether or not it should even be graded, if it even should go through the process.
Right. Yeah. So one of the biggest deals was to make sure that I could take a collector who's just been collecting old school all these years, and now all of a sudden finds out if he wants to sell his collection or insure his collection, he wants to get them graded. And then everybody tells him, well, if you're going to get them graded, maybe you should get them pressed. So we make it to where it's so easy, right? You fill out the form, put as much information as you know, and then when they get here, we can do as much of that, walk you through that as you need. So yeah, we can look at them. Let's say you send me 100 copper books, and they're only worth submitting to CGC and getting graded if they're going to grade a 9.8. I can look at every single book, tell you if I think it will or not with an 85% or so accuracy.
Mm-hmm.
And then that way, only the ones that are worth it go through the whole process of the pressing and the grading. And we can also send them directly to the auction house after they're graded. So it can be an all automatic system where all you got to do is start the process and the rest of it goes on, is all service based.
Okay, yeah, it's like a one-stop shop. Yeah, so that pre-screen could
Right.
really be good because that can save you a lot of time and money. If you know it's not going to hit a certain grade or whatever, then you don't even have to bother with all that.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. And then of course key books are easy targets. Those almost always are good choices, right?
Yeah, right. Awesome. All right, so I sorry to interrupt. What did you want to show us?
Let's see. We can talk about restoration detection.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially when you're dealing
because,
with age, right?
So here's the thing. So Hero Restoration, when we first opened, was all about restoring at the time 70-year-old books, right? Like this Batman #1.
That's crazy.
And I think I lost my light here. I forgot about this light. And then eventually pressing became popular, and that's a thing too. But what's really popular now is restoration removal, or detecting restoration before you get invested in a book. Restoration removal we can talk about too. What's a good restoration removal candidate to turn a book from a purple label to a blue label, or you have it raw but it has restoration. And then we can talk about restoration detection, things like black light. I got some black light here going on. We can talk about bleed through, how to spot black marker, those type of things. What kind of books are victims? Oh, I tell you, every time I see a high grade Hulk 181 raw for sale, I get the shivers because I'm like, so many people touch the black and orange on the copy that I just that's the great thing about CGC. There's a plug. Their restoration detection is great. We offer restoration detection here, and even if you don't use our restoration detection service, a lot of times we catch it, but we don't catch as much as CGC does. So that's another thing that makes the whole grading process important for a lot of the new people that are new to grading and pressing.
So Mike, really quick, there was a good question in the chat. Hold on, I just lost it. Hold on.
That's all right.
Oh yeah, what I wanted to know is if somebody sent you a signature series book, are you able to still crack it, press it, send it back, and still keep the signature, the yellow label?
No. CCS is the only one that can do that. They're in-house. It's it's unfair, but oh well.
So they got the monopoly on that. When I first got into this, nobody liked CCS, but I've been hearing better things about them recently.
Yeah, well, CCS is a pretty large company, right? So I would imagine that just like CGC, you got some fluctuations there, maybe. Let's see. Can we?
So I can see that. So Mike, that big blot on the H of the Hulk. What's going on over there?
So this is a book that's had moderate to extensive restoration, but it only got a 4.5, and so it wasn't really done very well. So the reason it's here, of course, is we're going to get rid of the resto and redo it. because reversing this to unrestored, you can't do. You can only do that with slight books. So here you can see that the H in the Hulk's been color touched. When you come down here, what's purple right here versus gray means that that's also been color touched. All of the Hulk's arm biceps have been color touched. All inside here, you can see in the yellow. So this is one way you can detect color touch is under the black light, it'll show up a different color than it does under the regular light.
Wow, interesting.
Right? So, because you can see that, the whole Hulk here is gray, but it might be hard to see through the camera, but that's a purple. You can definitely see it's much darker. So at worst case, you notice it looks like a stain, or almost like, remember when you were a kid and you had that marker, you could mark something and you wouldn't see it unless it was under black light.
Mm-hmm.
Glue is the same way. That's how a lot of glue is detected, is you'll look inside and you'll see some white speckles, bright white speckles, and that'll be glue. Here's some glue down here at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
You see those white right there? That's glue. You see all that purple? That's bad off white that got done on the inside of the cover.
We can see that a lot. You can see along the inside on the edge there, that darker
it shows
color.
Up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. So that's one of the ways you can tell. That's black light is most helpful for figuring out how much color touch or restoration's been done to a book. But when you're trying to look for color touch through your collection or books that you just bought, there are quick, easy ways to do that. And so.
Wow, so that's a good tip for those of you guys who are buying raw silver aged books. Get yourself a black light.
Yeah, get yourself a black light. I got a longer tube one, and then this little battery one helps. You really got to be in. It's got to be pretty dark. The darker, the better. If you're in a pitch black, you're going to spot more that way. Now, this Amazing Spider-Man #1 has also got color touch. Not so much, though. Somebody tried to do a little blue over here.
Mm-hmm.
They did that right there. And they tried to do some here. But a couple of things you can do to find spot color touch. The very first thing you want to check. Okay, so when people, here's the thing, a lot of slight color touch got done to books that shouldn't have been done. I don't think it's done much anymore because a lot of it gets caught, but there's still a lot out there. And the most popular places to do a little color touch here and there is along the spine or along the edges, and usually over color break creases where the paper's weak. So the first thing you just do is you go inside here and you want to look at the spine. And what you're looking for is you're looking for ink or paint that's bled through. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to carefully here show you. This book's going to get a full restoration. Mm-hmm. But what you can see, if you look at the bottom of the spine, you'll see some splotches. Right here.
Yeah, that dark spot on the bottom left, right?
Yeah, that is the most common what it'll look like.
Mm.
Right? There is no other excuse for that, almost always. No other excuse for finding anything along that spine other than white, unless it's a stain. But you can even see here where it's almost bled through too. So that's the first tail. Now, some stuff can be color touched and it doesn't bleed through on the inside. So how could you spot it then? Okay, so if you got a light really low and you look at the book at an angle, you can really see the gloss on the cover. And so one of the things you can do is looking for an area where the gloss changes, right? And you can spot black Sharpie real easy that way, because the Sharpie looks kind of, it has kind of like a copper look to it at an angle. It's kind of funny. So you can see stuff that way and know that there's color touch too.
That's a good. Those are like 3 quick good tips. So there's a couple of good questions here that's coming up in the chat. So our guy Brandon Stoinski Comics is asking about trimming. How can you spot it, and how common is it?
Okay, so how common is it? It's about as common as slight color touch, really, because what happened was a long time ago, people were doing it on a lot of books. Silver Age ones were some of the worst ones because they had the overhangs. And in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if this book is trimmed. In fact, I think it is on the top edge. Here, let's take a look.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Now this one's going to be easy, probably, because that edge is crooked. Number one. Okay, number two, usually you got an overhang on these. There's no overhang. One way, the easiest way to tell if a book is trimmed is if it's been trimmed badly, right? You're looking for uneven cuts where there shouldn't be, pages sticking out where they shouldn't stick out. Let's see, what else? You can't go by size. You can't go by how much of the image is on the front cover. It is sometimes hard to detect trimming. That is the toughest restoration, or for lack of a better category, to detect. It's grouped with restoration, but it's never done in professional restoration, which is why usually if there is any trimming and it gets graded, it usually gets graded in amateur, with only a few exceptions that I've seen.
So, Mike, let me ask you something, because Knights of Old has a good question. I missed it before, but you mentioned that CCS or CGC has kind of they're better at detecting restoration. Why is that?
Better at detecting restoration than I, for example?
Yeah, I guess I don't know. Do they have other tools, or what is it that? Why is it that they're able to catch it more? You think?
Okay, so yeah, so this would be my opinion, right? Because I haven't gotten the tour behind closed doors, and I don't think I ever will.
Okay.
Right? So for the most part, they're using the same tools. Maybe they got, they're going to have a dark room. They're going to have black lights. They might be using sometimes a microscope. Who knows? They might be using lasers, for trimming or sizing. But what they're looking for is what everybody's looking for, and that is a telltale. You're looking for a telltale that tells you something has been done. And so that's why sometimes if it's been done really good, it can be hard to detect until you find a tell, right? Something that distinguishes it and makes it show up. For example, if you take an old comic book that's got a tan cover and off-white pages, and you do something to the cover that makes it bone white, you send it in, they're going to know automatically the cover's been cleaned because the cover's bone white and the pages are not. And that's not natural. So a lot of it is telltales. But with the trimming, I have no idea how they take that to the next level. But they had to, because there was, whenever there's a weakness, there's somebody trying to take advantage of it. And so for a while early on, of course, there was a problem with trimming detection. And that became a topic. And then eventually CGC seemed to fix that because the problem went away.
Hey, Mike, so Anthony Garcia is asking you, do you have a favorite book to work on?
A favorite book to work on? Yeah. Well, when it comes to, say, like pressing, I like Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 129. I love pressing it. Always looks great afterwards. That yellow cover just pops. That one's fun. And Hulk 181 is actually Hulk 181 I'm burnt out on. That is the #1 submitted book in the last 60 days. It's like every other year that book goes through such a surge.
Yeah.
And then the hottest newcomer right now is Silver Surfer #3, right?
Oh, wow.
I've seen a lot of that book come in.
Is it harder?
That one's like,
is it harder to press those square-bound books like Giant Size X-Men 1 and Silver Surfer 3 and 4 and all that?
it's a little harder, yeah. It gets even harder when there's spine defects, and then even harder if you get into like those Dark Knight 80s square bounds. Those are really hard.
They're like little trade paperbacks, really.
Yeah, they are. They did a lot of that stuff.
So I like the stats. I like what's coming through a lot. Brandon is asking, have you been seeing a lot of Shang-Chi's coming through recently?
Oh yeah, the Marvel
premiere or
Marvel special.
Oh, is that?
Yeah, so yeah, a lot of those, and a lot in high grade too, of course, right? Nice black cover.
Yeah.
I just saw one recently. That's a really hot book. So that's part of my job that I like is I know what's hot a lot of times just because I start seeing it come in multiple submissions.
So then you ask yourself,
and that's not coincidence.
So then you ask yourself, well, maybe I should be picking this book up or something. Everyone's sending it in.
Well, I do that willingly and unwillingly. You see a book enough and you almost want it. And the only 2 books I haven't given in on that come in a lot is Batman Adventures 12 and New Mutants 87, because I don't like the cover art, so I just refuse to own those books.
So Mike, that ties in with a question from earlier. I don't remember who asked, but being in the industry and working with comics for so long, are you still a collector?
Yeah. And being a collector is what started me in this. So I'm just happy that I get to do what I like for a living, and I make other people money, which means I make them happy, right? So that's always great to hear about that. I see that question there. Foil and hologram covers more difficult to press. Yes. And there's quite a few of them that you either can't press. Usually the ones you can't press don't need it unless they've suffered some severe trauma. I'm sorry for all you guys that bought books on eBay and the guy didn't know how to ship them. So some of that stuff you just can't do. Somebody showed me a Dark Knight, got shipped bad and the spine's so bent. But those Dark Knights, the glue just wants to come right out if you work on that spine too hard.
Yeah, even those like Venom Lethal Protector 1s are like a hard stock foil cover. And I don't know if you could even press those or not.
You can, but it's hard. It's harder to get the defects out. What was the one I pressed recently? I was really happy with. That one had a thick card. I don't know. I see so many books. I get a lot of stuff mixed up. Yeah.
We're getting a question on the Amazing Fantasy 15 in the back. Of course, it's a real one, but I guess
Oh, yeah. I bet people wonder about that in my videos, too. So what's the deal with this Amazing Fantasy 15?
Yeah.
Not asking if this one's real. Well, yeah, because we saw the color touch on that. So we know that must be real. Huh? All right. The real AF-15. So this guy is just in really bad shape. Oh, and yeah. So this is, I've seen this before too. This is one of those deals where someone color touched this and then they put tape over the color touch.
Oh, wow.
Wow, yeah, right? So it's got tape all around the outside. You can see tape staining from it being in the inside for a long, long time. Look at that. They use tape to attach pieces to the book. But it's been signed by Jack Kirby, old school.
Wow, that's awesome.
Right there on the first page. So I think I'm supposed to make this book a fine or better, I think is what the job is on this. It's a full-blown restore to remove the tape, remove the old resto, and do new resto.
So
and maybe I have to work on this first page. I don't know. It's kind of chipped. Look at the notes.
When do you determine whether you need to go full resto or resto removal?
So you only want to do resto removal when if you're not counting tape. Oh, by the way, tape isn't considered restoration and removing tape isn't considered restoration, but not to get sidetracked, slight restoration, usually professional, is what you want to remove. So here's what happens. Sometimes you can remove slight professional restoration color touch from a book or even a professional tear seal and no marks, no damage from it, and then you can get an unrestored gray. Then you can have amateur slight color touch or a very small amount of glue that also can be removed to get you a grade, but then the grade's going to drop because you have to damage the book to remove it. So at some point, so let's say you say, well, Mike, you know, yeah, it's got color touch here, but you can just remove that paper, right? Well, yeah, but then it becomes a piece of Swiss cheese and you got to draw the line somewhere. I resist most restoration removal here because I don't like damaging books. I like saving books. I like making books better. So we really try to be selective on the restoration that we'll remove here. And anyone else who does it is the same way. Slight is what you're looking for. Now, here's the thing about slight and grading labels. A slight is a wide range. Slight can mean a couple of dabs on the spine, or it could mean the whole spine. It takes a while before it gets to moderate. So you have to be careful with that. I think there's some other YouTube videos on that about buying those type of candidates. I wouldn't do that on purpose. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, so you have 3 levels of restoration, right? You have what, slight, amateur, and then you have moderate and then professional, right?
Well, you got the 2 groups, which is amateur and professional, and then slight, moderate, extensive. And that scale's been changed around some on the CGC, but not on. So CBCS uses that scale. CGC changed it to ABC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mike, what are your thoughts on, CGC always had the purple label, but CBCS didn't change the color of their label when it comes to restored books. What are your thoughts on that?
I've heard from a lot of clients who like that. Yeah. And then I've heard some that don't. There's pros and cons to that. My perspective is different, right? So I have a hard time. I don't have a problem with a purple label, and I kind of like a purple label because I know right away that book's got restoration. I don't have to work harder at it, look closer, or it's quick and easy that way. Whereas with the CBCS, I have to do that. And so if the label's blurry, I don't know, which book it is. That being said, that might be the way of the future, is to not have different color labels separating the two. Because I think, if I remember right now, CGC has a blue label with a purple strip at the top, and that's for conservation.
I think it's actually a gray strip, and I was going to ask about
it. Is it gray? Yeah, okay, that might be right.
That seems a little bit newer from what I could tell, but yeah, they have this new conservation label where people can try to take measures to what's the word I'm looking for? Not preserve a book, and and like I guess like tear seals and such when they're not needed.
Right. Well, what's happening is CGC recognizes that the big keys are 80 years old. Right. And so they might need some stuff that, up till recently was just considered flat out restoration. And because only a percentage of the comic community likes restored books, they want to try to bridge the gap between books starting to fall apart because people are afraid of a purple label, versus also separating the difference between making a book look like new versus just saving it from coming apart.
Right.
Right. Or the book's already brittle, so now you have to do conservation so that the brittleness isn't progressing and so forth. So that has become a separate label that CGC did. I think 2 years ago they started.
The first time I saw it was on an Action 1, like a 7.5.
Wow. So that seems like that would be, well, you know what that would be. So if you're considering having your book conserved rather than restored, then a good conservation candidate, as far as it going up in grade and being worth doing the work in the first place, is let's say it's a 2.5 because the cover is split all the way down the spine and detached, and it's just a matter of doing a tear seal and reattaching it to the pages. But because it's a really solid golden age cover, it still looks great. So now it's gone from a 2.5 to a 7.5, but all they had to do was that conservation work. That's a good result, right?
Right.
For example, let's say a book is a 2.5, you do some conservation work on it, and now it's a 3.5. That's not good, because a 3.5 conserved, well, is it worth as much as a 2.5 unrestored? And so that's where you start to get into deciding the candidates. Now, eventually what we're hoping for is that people will say, you know, it isn't really going to profit me to restore this brittle book, but I'm going to do it because there's only so many copies left and I want to save it. Hopefully we'll get to that point, like other collectibles, right? Other collectible markets are different in that case, but that's because stuff is more scarce or more expensive. This book right here is the most popular Silver Age book to restore because its restored value is probably the best percentage-wise out of all the books in Silver Age. I don't know why, but it does really good. GPA shows that if you take a beat-up book like this and you sink a bunch of money into it and get a decent grade, it's going to work out well for you. It's not a way to flip books. I really don't recommend restoration so much for flipping books. It's really better to take something like this that you don't want to look at much and make it into something you want to look at. Plus, this tape's been on too long. If it keeps going, it's going to wreck the paper. That's what more people are becoming aware of, which is good. And that's why a lot of people are sending in books just to have tape removed only, which has become more and more popular because it's not considered restoration. It helps the book's value, and then it also helps its preservation.
Okay. So Ben Hizzle's asking, what about rusty staples? Is there anything that could be done, not restoration-wise, to remove rust from a staple?
No, you can't. If you monkey with the staples, you're going to either get a green label, most likely a green label. If you do anything with it, you can't. So what you got to do, so here's the thing, the rust usually will not get worse unless it's exposed to excessive humidity. If your books are is stored somewhere where you're keeping track of the humidity and you're making sure it's never climbing over 60%, yeah, you're not going to have a problem with that. Otherwise, you can't do that. You do it if it's a book that's getting restored, of course. And in fact, you should actually replace the staples with stainless steel, but that's not accepted in comic books. In the conservation world, it's almost mandatory. If you sent a book, say, to the Smithsonian to have that conserved, then they would definitely take those staples and say, oh, those got to go. We can't have those cheap, rusty 0.0001 cent staples in there. But it's a different world here in comics.
Isn't it also true, like, with Golden Age and Silver Age. So doesn't Golden Age have acceptable forms of restoration that would get a blue label, whereas Silver will get a purple?
Yeah, because there were things that were done back in the 40s with usually it's glue. And what happened was like tape in the 60s. In the 40s, people were taking glue and dabbing the staples on near mint books so that they wouldn't get staple tears. It was considered a strengthening thing. It was kind of a positive. But whether they used, you know, a non-acidic glue and all that is another story. And no, it probably wasn't. So CGC has seemed to decide to allow that with a notation on the label. But then they do that in the 60s. That was usually done to hold a staple together because that paper was so thin and so weak. It wasn't long before it was already starting to rip. So they do that. But then, you know, if the glue on a Golden Age is just a dab, but it's fixing a problem, it's probably going to get a purple label.
Gotcha. So Hattie's asking here, because you mentioned about the humidity, that they hear cedar wood cabinets are a good place to store. Are you familiar with that?
I think, yeah, I've heard that. I think the cedar is just a good wood. It's a good inert wood. It doesn't necessarily have any control over humidity, right? Because you can't seal your books in anything completely sealed. So whatever humidity is outside of whatever you have your books in is going to work its way inside. Even a slab. You have a slab on the wall and the humidity goes to 100%. It won't take that long before it works its way in there.
And Mike, you remember like a couple of years ago that was found that these certain types of fireproof safes that had some kind of chemical in there, it was rusting like modern book staples.
Yeah, it's water-based chemical is what's in those safes. And so I think what you have to do is go up to the gel type, which is more expensive, right? And then you're starting to talk, I think, you know, 7-10 grand for those type of safes.
Right.
You know, a gun safe is an obvious choice, right? Because guns, that's why you have a special safe for your guns because you don't want them to rust either. So it's best not to do that, to use that type of safe. I don't know how safe safes are anyways. Fireproof safes only guarantee that your comics are not going to ignite. Doesn't guarantee that they won't get smoke damage,
right,
or that they won't be super brittle because of the heat, you know. So I think that's a little,
right.
It's not bad, but you got to be careful about that. Yeah.
Thornton Applebottom, he's talking about the cedar cabinets that cedar self-regulates humidity, and that's why they're used for humidors. I mean, it makes sense to me, but like,
well, it's probably acts as a buffer, but it's not acting as a desiccant. I doubt that, you know. And see, here's the thing. I mean, a humidor, that's you know, you're forcing humidity in there, so it's a different situation. Now, if you want to, so yeah, if you put your books in a cedar cabinet and then you put your desiccant in there, is that better than just having your long box, say, sitting on the floor? Yeah, of course it is. But it's not, cedar is not a replacement for having a good environment, if that makes sense. Environment is important. Basements are typically not good places.
right.
Attics are typically not good places. Floors aren't good places. Usually wherever you're keeping the coziest is a good place. That's usually got a good humidity equilibrium. And temperature.
Yeah, cool.
Temperature is not as big of a deal, but cool is always better than hot.
Right. So Knights of Old saying, many say rust migration on paper never stops. Is that true?
So scientifically speaking, I don't have the research to say whether that's true or not. I bet on the microscopic level, maybe. But if you got a rusty staple, you take a picture of it, you store it in 50% humidity, and then you bring it out 10 years later and take another picture, I bet you won't tell the difference. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think it progresses that much. I think every time you see rust that's progressing, it's because it is being exposed to humidity that's above 60 or 70%. And that can be occurring more often than people realize, depending on where you live. It doesn't even have to be a rainy state, right? Florida is super humidity. Why is CGC in Florida? Every time I send books to Florida, I'm like, oh my God, please don't let that humidity get to the books, right? Nothing will cause a book to revert back to its pre-press state than putting it in a super humid situation. Now, CGC, I'm sure, has nice climate control in their building, and I make sure that when we ship stuff, that's sealed up like a tomb, right? I didn't send anything last week thanks to the hurricane.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out to be a problem, but you'd sure hate to find out that the distribution center your box is sitting at got hit.
Right.
That wouldn't be good.
So you might have touched on this a little bit earlier, but Symbiote Massacre is asking about if, pressing books, if there's a possibility that it could damage a book. He was told not to press his Fantastic Four because it would have gotten damaged. I think you touched on it that it could, right? Depending on if it has rips or.
Yeah. So a book can be damaged by pressing if it's in too weak of a state to be pressed, or it's being pressed wrong. Is what happens. Now, most of your well-experienced pressers can press just about anything. But for example, if the book has a spine roll and it also has a spine split on the cover, removing that spine roll is going to put some stress on that split and could cause it to get worse. And that might be a case where you say, hey, it's probably best you not do anything. Do not press a book without removing a spine roll. So either remove it and press it or leave it alone. And so that would be a case where if you say, hey, if you think the spine split's going to get worse, let's just pass on the press. That's where you would say no. And whereas, someone might just go for it and then they will damage the book. So you do have to have some caution. And it is good that if you're using a presser who's checking those for you.
Right.
And you're paying for a full service. Right. Yeah. Yeah. We don't have a service where, the books aren't looked at first before they're pressed. We always make sure every single book is safe to press.
Gotcha. Cool, man. A lot of great questions, guys. I appreciate you guys participating. And
oh yeah, I love the questions.
Awesome. So I'm just taking a look to see if anyone else has anything.
Yeah, I need a quick 1 minute break. I'll be right back.
Take a break. All right, man. So yeah, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask about pressing, restoration, or anything like that, let me mute one real quick. All right. What's going on, everybody in the chat? What's up, Steven Spock? What up, Danny Lee? What up, the Art Chemist? I see Bob Blanton in here. Hattie's in here. Who else we got? Amazing Asian in here. Oh, see, I can't highlight that emoji here. Yeah, guys, for sure. Like, if you want to get anything pressed, send them to Mike, herorestoration.net. He will offer all those services, dry cleaning, pressing, send it to CGC for you, and then CGC will send it directly back to you. What's up, Alonzo? Appreciate that, Zach B. What's up, Alex? Yeah, man. All right, Knights, we'll try to ask when he comes back. And then we might start to wrap it up because we've been on for about an hour. I don't want to take up too much of the man's time. What's up, Gold School? Yeah, man, appreciate you guys joining in, dropping mad knowledge. Yeah, man, Mike knows his stuff, man. And then, you know, if you're new to this, as you submit stuff, as you get, you know, feedback from people like Mike, you'll learn too, and then you'll know what to spot and detect on your own. What's up, Gustavo? Thank you, Mike Miller. Yeah, Alex, I heard good things about Rocket Comics. They must be in Vegas, right? I think I've seen them at some conventions too. Thank you, Mike Keene. Dark Mufasa, what's up? Oh, what happened? Yeah, nice. I do have that Submariner book coming in. Yeah, Danny, he spoke on those type of books that they are very difficult to press, those prestige books. It can be done, but it all depends on the type of defect and everything. All right, Cyrus, we'll have to ask him when he comes here on how much it costs. I forget the prices. It used to be like $10 a book to get it pressed. Oh, here he goes.
All right.
Hey, Mike, can you tell us what the rates are to get a book pressed and sent to CGC?
Sure. Standard turnaround time. Copper books are $12. Modern books, 2000 and newer, they are $18. Bronze Age is $18. Silver Age and older, $24.
Is that for the CGC cost or the pressing cost?
Pressing.
Okay, cool. So you're out of Oregon, right?
Oregon, yeah.
Oregon Trail.
All right. Let's see here. So let's say that you want to send some books into me, and you want to screen them yourself first for a 9/8 candidate. This is really helpful, or something like a magnifying glass, okay? Because here's what we want to do. So with restored books, these old guys, we're doing so much to them. Me touching them is the last thing that's its problem. But when you got stuff like 9/8 screens and you got modern books, those black covers, I don't care how clean your hands are, you know. You can get fingerprints on them easy, and oh my gosh, the CGC hammer books with fingerprints on them. It's terrible. So if you got a magnifying glass and you're looking for 9/8, really straightforward. You just want to go around the front of the book and you're looking for any color breaks. And really, you're looking down the spine. Now, sometimes like this book's got a white spine, it can get a little more tricky. But usually you got color on the spine. And if you find a color break, small, even small, it's not going to make it. And you also have to assume for every defect you find, you're missing one, the CGC is going to catch. Also, I wouldn't get too, you got to be careful what you'll pass for spine ticks and what you'll pass for pressable defects. See, now this book's got some color breaking going down on the right edge too, got damaged. So, you know, no way 9/8. So usually you can find it that way. But if you get as far as going all the way around, you don't see a color break, you go into the back side to check to see if anything's happened there. And the same thing, especially like on the, you know, most of your 9/8s or more modern books don't always have the white back, but the color back. So it's important to check down the spine on the back cover where it's color and look for any color breaks there. Because that's where most of them happen. And this is going to happen even though the book went straight into the bag and board from the printer. And that's because anytime, I won't do it to the book, but anytime this happens, where flexion's going like this to the book, spine tick, that happens. So that happens as soon as they're done printing the book and they're getting stacked. I was going to say, that's funny. You talk about they still don't really care when it comes to distribution, but at least they're in a box now. Remember the old days? They used to use the bundle ties, those plastic, you know. Wow. Yeah, you ever get one of those copies of a Bronze Age book, and it's like it was like it got hammered with a cross, right? Like they're trying to run, doing an exorcism on the book. So yeah, they, so books are 9.6s straight from right off the printer. It's hard to, you got to check for the 9.8s because of that.
That's a good point. A lot of misconception is if you buy a book right off the rack, it should be a 9.8, but it's not necessarily the case.
No, it's not. And again, especially with new stuff now, the art is so busy that without a magnifying glass, you might just miss a color break on the spine.
Yeah,
because it's not that long. There's the graphics now are just amazing, right? The transitions, they'll transition into infinite colors on the printing, which is great. And all these are, I'm surprised these are older. Some of these are older books. Here's a newer one that they'll pre-screen.
Hey, Mike, do you have a drop-off location for someone that's local?
Yeah, so this is the reception area for Hero Restoration. It's appointment only. You just got to let us know 24 hours in advance. And you can bring them in, have me check them out personally before you go.
Hey, real quick, I want to give a shout out to Tess for Echo, who hit us with the $2 super chat, said thanks for the great info. Hashtag El Paso strong. Yes, sir. Appreciate that.
Yeah, this one failed pre-screen because it has a very tiny color break on the back. And it has a couple of spine ticks on the front that aren't going to come out and stay out with a press. So here's the thing about spine ticks. People have heard, will they press out? Yes, a lot of times spine ticks will press out. Will they stay pressed out? Probably not. Okay, once it goes back on the board, at some point it can go like this, right? If it doesn't do that at some point on its way to get graded, then you have the graders taking it out and looking at it, right? And you got grader number 1, page count, right? Grader number 2, grader number 3. Okay, by then, that spine tick's going to come back. And those spine ticks are there in the first place, not because they were the book was mishandled. It's just that it's the nature of production and when things flex. And so the thicker the book, the less it can do that. So comic books are really prone to it because they're very thin. The old days when you bought a book off of a spinner rack, they'd always have the really bad color breaks up here because the top of the book would just bend over in the rack and you'd just be waiting for a buyer.
Mike, I want to lump two questions together. Somebody asked about pressing books, modern books that have the digital codes inside. And then Chris here just brought up Mark Jeweller's inserts. Are there anything special that you have to do with those type of books?
You do. If you don't do something special, it will cause an impression. And it's really not any dissimilar than what pressers do to protect the book from the staples creating indentations in the cover, right? Because you take a brand new book and those books, that paper is very thin. You put that in under pressure, just under pressure, and then take it back out, you'll see the staples, right, in the front of the cover. Right. Sometimes you see that normally because, sometimes Diamond will stack them up so high that it literally kind of, and the paper's just so thin. The older books, not so much. So that has to be done. If someone doesn't do it, then it's going to create an impression, and then it's going to get knocked down on the grade. Now, it's my understanding, usually it's if it causes a problem with the cover, and graders are much more lenient on the pages. And sometimes on the new stuff, I don't think they even care about where the comics code is thing. You got to remember too, the grading companies have an in-house presser. So they're only going to, so some of that is designed around what is doable, what isn't, and then how much it affects the grade that will dictate some of that.
Do you know what the highest grade you can get with a color break is? Is it a 9.6?
Well, I know at CBCS you can get a color break and get a 9.8.
With a one small color break, right?
Right. But I don't think that's the case with CGC, because when I pre-screen 9.8, everything I'm passing doesn't have a color break that I can see, and I'm looking pretty close, right? I miss stuff, but I'm looking pretty close. And even then, 15% of the time, I get a 9.6 back. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, what happens is both grading companies are very, very similar, but there's many subtle variances mm-hmm. That can work for your benefit or disadvantage on either company, and that fluctuates over time. Both companies go through strict, loose, all the time, so grades can change a little bit.
So Nice of Old is asking about CGC cases and if they're the best for protection, because he's seen books move a bit in them and damage fragile parts. And in my opinion, I don't know that it's really so much for protection as it is for like third-party condition, right? I mean,
well, yeah, your main motivation for putting it in a slab is because you want to establish its exact value. And when I say establish its exact value within reason, is you can either go to past sales on places like eBay or Heritage, or you can get, one of those services that tracks all those sales. And you can say, okay, my book in 8.5 is $500 all day long. And then that way, something happens to it. You can, your insurance company says, oh, okay, it's a 5.0. The market says it's, or whatever, and market says it's $500. Right. You get it. Or if you want to sell the book, right? If you want to sell the book, everybody's going to pay more for a CGC 8.0 than a John Doe 8.0, right?
Exactly.
Plus, they know, also it's a big incentive because people want to make sure that they know their book doesn't have restoration. Right. So they want to get it integrated for that, especially if they want to sell it. They don't want people hesitant to buy it because they're worried that it might have restoration. So the grading is for that. And then, yeah, there's also cases like, let's say the cover is almost ready to be detached and they're afraid that unless it's, in something permanent, it's going to get worse. That's another reason why they get them graded. Most of the damage that happens with a comic book in a slab is the same thing that can happen to the comic book in a bag and board. It's not free from that. Right. Shaken case syndrome, which is the most popular, seems to have become less and less that I know of.
Right, especially with the newer cases, I would think that seem a little bit more sturdy than the previous one.
Yeah. Well, and the biggest problem or the biggest focus or difference that whether it's going to be a lot of shaken case or not is the inside well, how it holds the book in place, and both companies are always constantly seem to be working on that to make improvements. It seems easy. Hey, how about design an inner well where the comic can't move? Well, the problem is that can cause other problems. It can put pressure on the book, or maybe it's pushing something in it shouldn't.
Right.
Or it won't be, or it isn't flexible to fit all the different sizes. So there's a lot more going on there than what it is. So it seems simple. I would say that the Newton rings oil slick look that people complain about a lot is still there. And I do not understand that because only one grading company has that issue. And that one bothers me. That's my opinion there. So they don't always make good wall hangers if they have that oil slick. Not that it's good to have your slabs on the wall if they're going to be for a long period of time or worth.
So DJ Illustrious said, Mike restored my AF-15. He's one of the best in the biz.
Oh, great.
So, Driven from Desperation, thank you for the $2 super chat. He's asking, can Mike press and slab his 1940s Batman 4? I'll answer that for you. Yes, he can.
Right? Yeah.
Mike, good.
And
So go ahead.
Nothing. I was just going to ramble.
No, that just made me curious to what's the most valuable book that you've ever worked on?
The most valuable, well, probably ones I'm working on now. Well, I worked on a Captain America #1. That's pretty valuable.
Wow.
And I'm still waiting to work on the bigger ones than that. I got some close calls, right? Batman #1 here is no small issue.
Not at all. So what's going on with that? Is that a fasimile cover that you're gonna marry to?
Oh no. These covers here that you see are in the process of either being restored or having the restoration removed and then restored. So this one here is you can actually, it's been leaf casted. So you're kind of seeing it before it gets color touched.
Okay, so that's
this one had a bunch of restoration removed. It was leaf casted. The spine's gone. Here's another one I'm working on. Action Comics #7. This is the third appearance on cover, I think, or third appearance in book. I can't remember which. It's pretty early, right? This one has had some terrible, terrible restoration done to it that needs to be removed. You can see the restoration's actually fallen apart. It's terrible. This is also in the restoration. Someone glued some pieces on. Those will have to get removed. Oh, hey, yeah, this guy lights up like a Christmas tree in there. Black light.
Oh, so that's the actual original covers that you took off the book and you're working on them. Wow.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot that's in one piece right now. Almost everything is getting worked on. Try to get to those right away.
Oh, I can see it right away. The little blotches. Yeah. Wow. Look at that.
Yeah. The stuff that shows up super white, that is photocopies that were glued on, right? So there's even a photocopy there that you almost don't notice under regular light where they recreated this text, right? And now you can see purple. All this purple is all color touch, right? See it in there. You can see it here. Even Superman got it. There's the other side of it. So it needs a lot of work. Yeah, see photocopy there. And I think what we're going to do on this one, I think the back cover is actually getting replaced. Oh, let's see. Oh, yeah, I wanted to show you this. I can't believe some of the great stuff used to get. They used to be really laxed on this. You know the light shining through that back cover?
Yeah.
Okay, this book, I gotta see if I can find the label. This was in a 5.0 slab.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had stuff that looks brand new get a 5.0 slab nowadays, so I don't know what they were thinking back then. The good old days when you could get a high grade without having to do a lot of work.
Hey, Mike, really quick, what's your turnaround time to press and submit a book?
So I have 3 different turnaround times. We got 3-week, 6-week, and 11-week. So it just depends on how fast you want it done. So it's kind of just like the same with the CGC tiers. You can only go so fast though if you want to make sure you're getting the best results. You know, there's a lot of shortcuts, and some stuff can come out just as good with the shortcuts. But if you want every book to come out as good as it possibly can, you got to give it 3 weeks for the process on fast track stuff. And because we offer a fast track service just like CGC, the more people take advantage of our fast track, the more time we need for our standard tier. And that's why it's 11 weeks. CGC is the same way. They receive thousands of books a day. And a lot of those are walkthrough and express. And those have to be dealt with right away. That's why value tier is 90 days. Economy is 90 days because there's a lot of demand for the faster tier.
Gotcha. Cool, man. All right, so I know we've been on a little while here. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Or?
Well, no, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost out of time.
Okay, yeah. So let's wrap it up. So, man, this was great information here. I know we had a couple of questions that we didn't really get to. I think Alex Perez is asking if there's a minimum for books he could send, but he can send you one book, right? There's no minimum.
There's no minimum. You can send just one book. We also can do this again next Friday, maybe, or sometime soon again.
Yeah, I'm down to do that again. Well, real quick, let's get Brandy hit us with a $5 super chat here. Thank you, Brandy. But yeah, there's a couple of questions. I know Knights of Old's asking, and I don't know if you're familiar with Golden Age and how much of a percentage it makes up on the CGC census. I mean, I'm sure it's very small, but
well, so yeah. I know a lot if it has to do with my job, right? So in that respect, I got a wealth of knowledge there. You could ask me all kinds of stuff related to that, but if you say what do who wrote this story or who did that cover, I don't know that. Even though I collect books, I'm not good at that stuff. But I know what books are popular or good choices for restoration or pressing. I know a lot about what paper all the books have been made out of, because that's my job to know paper. I know what the moderns are made out of. I know when they changed from acidic page paper to non-acidic page paper before they went to glossy. It's those kind of things that I know a lot about. I know a lot about grading and CGC and CBCS, submitting.
Maybe next time, Mike, when we do, we'll plan something out soon, and we can maybe have an overhead shot of either you doing a pre-screen or you, I don't know, if you're working on something, and maybe we can have it more focused on one aspect, because you do a wide variety of things, So we'll try to figure it out. Maybe we'll get comments on the video as to what people would like to see, and we can do something like that.
Sounds perfect.
Cool. So let's wrap it up so everyone can go eat dinner and everything. Again, Mike, we appreciate you taking your time and sharing the knowledge with us, and we'll have you on again soon for sure.
Oh, yeah, great. Hey, I just wanted to show one more thing here real quick.
Sure.
Third appearance of Batman, y'all.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So
those are fun to work on.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
Somebody send me a Tech 27. I'll fix you up real nice.
Awesome, man. All right, you guys, thanks for watching. You guys hit the like button on the way out. Make sure you subscribe, and we're going to do it again real soon. See you guys.
Excellent.